Patrick, how are you doing today?
Good. How are you?
Really, really good. Such a pleasure to talk to you again. This feels like the perfect opportunity to ask maybe the most cliched question, but what is your favorite scary movie of all time? And obviously, without cheating, can't say when you've grown.
No, I know. Let's see. Well, it's funny because if you had said horror movie, because see I'll be honest with you, my favorite horror movies are not necessarily scary movies, meaning like Silence of the Lambs is a huge influence on me. Don't know if it's necessarily scary, but certainly moody and tonally, and the way it's shot, and the great Jonathan Demme at the helm and Tak Fujimoto shooting it. I mean, the score. It's that for me is certainly top three. Jaws, which I even saw as recent as I didn't see all of it yesterday, but I was turned it on yesterday. I discovered a new shot in Jaws that I'd never seen before, and I've seen that movie for 40 years. It's just awesome. So those movies to me, again, I wouldn't know they're necessarily scary, but they're certainly horror movies. So those come to the top for me.
I can help clarify. They're both very scary to me. So
They
I
are
will
they?
absolutely qualify them.
Well, I just mean not like jump scary, like oh my god, it got me, like for sure, but definitely in the genre.
Well, thank you for setting me up with that beautiful segue because I don't want to ruin anything for anyone ahead of seeing it. But I had a full drink in my hand, and 10 minutes in, that was on the floor because I had dropped
Really?
it out of it because of a jump scare that
Which one?
happens.
Which one? Do you
It's
mind me
in,
asking?
it's in the first class that he has where he's
Oh,
going
sure.
in the door.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I get like, as a film lover, I feel like, oh, I can tell when a jump scare is coming. And I did
Right.
not see that one coming, and that drink went
Yeah.
flying.
Good.
So
Good.
when you know you've got a good joke, like, can you feel it in your gut when you're filming, or is it in the edit when you're like, this is going to be the one?
So specifically that one you're talking about, that's in the edit. That ended up differently than when we shot it. To be honest with you, you have to. There's so many elements that come together, and sometimes I'll be honest with you, that sometimes don't come together, and you go, I don't know if we got it. We got a lot of stuff, or we'll have to go back and build this because we got to move on. And how it fits in the movie when the audience is ready for it. And really ultimately, how do you surprise them? The use of music when there's the music too much. So trying to craft that really is like, man, the movies are, it's not unlike an action movie where you get all these pieces together and you have it in your head, but you got to go in there and see what you've really got. That's why the medium is really more for directors and editors than it is for actors, which is fantastic, which is just great. But yeah, I'm glad that one worked on you.
It did, and it really reminded me and harkened back to the now kind of infamous jump scare from the first one, where
Yeah.
if you try to describe what happens to a viewer, it doesn't sound scary at all. It's just like,
Yeah.
well, he's sitting there, and then the camera comes back, and there's just suddenly someone behind him, and it's like, well, that doesn't
Right.
sound too scary.
But it's all
But when
about
you
the misdirect.
exactly, it reminded me so much of that. Like at the time for that one, considering now it is, I think genuinely considered one of the best jump scares of modern cinema. Like even looking
For
back
sure.
now, you're like, we knew, or is that kind of similar where you're like, is this even going to be scary? And then it turns out, yes, it is actually very scary.
Yeah, well, I mean, for me, I had no clue because, of course, I never see it because he's behind me. So, I mean, I can tell you through talking with James over the years. I mean, I don't think it's talking out of school to say. I think some of the scares that he's probably most proud of are in that first movie, and probably because there is something to be said for. I almost hate to say this because you don't want this to bite you in the end, But there is something to be said for when you are confined to, hey, you only have 20 something days to shoot this movie. So you better be super efficient with what you're doing. And it's not going to be R-rated. We don't want any blood, any violence, any this and that. It really forces you to do your work in camera. And I think some of James's best scares ever are in that first Insidious movie because they're very practical. They really toy with your emotions. They toy with the misdirect. And that scene, it's Barbara Hershey talking about seeing the visitor. So you're in her world and you keep coming back to the same shot of me. Oh, right. And then you're kind of like, right. Oh, God. You don't expect it. So yeah, I'm with you. That is I'm sure every studio would like you to go, hey, can you do that one again? You're like, nope, already been done. Got to do something different.
Patrick, I feel like I could talk to you for literally hours about the horror genre, but unfortunately, time has caught up with us. So, congratulations again, and thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me.
Thank you, man. Great to see you.
Something is following us. I'm going to need you to remain still. Hello?
Jason, how are you doing today?
Nice to see you.
First of all, congratulations on the movie. When the first one came out, could you have envisioned that you'd be up to Insidious 5?
100% no. Even when the first one was, when it came out, when the first one opened, it actually opened to a relatively low number. And what was extraordinary about the first movie is the multiple. It had a 4 multiple. So that's very unusual, as you know, for a horror movie. But I'll tell you, when we finished the movie before it came out, our partner thought it was a DVD movie and thought it was going to go straight to video. And I said, I think it's probably a little bit better than that. But it's a fair question to ask, and neither one of us thought I'd be here talking about this movie 13 years later.
Looking back, it's kind of ingenious that I think it was the tagline for the first poster is "It's not the house that's haunted," and you're like, ooh, that's clever, because it is kind of an original idea where you are used to, I guess, a specific kind of setup for a horror movie. But again, if you try to describe it to someone, it doesn't come across properly. And I was just saying to Patrick, it, in my opinion, has one of the most legendary jump scares in cinema history is the sudden appearance behind him. But if you try to describe that with just words, people are like, that doesn't sound terribly scary until you see it. And then you see it's fantastic. So can you remember back then, I think that's kind of the DNA, origin point for
I do remember back then, and you make a great point, which is I'd be the first one to say this. People say, "What are you looking for in a low?" We're looking for a low budget, high concept, and still 13 years later, that's what I'm looking for: low budget, high concept. The Purge is the best example. It takes place in one house, big concept. Insidious breaks that rule. There you can pretend there's some high concept idea there or try and kind of strap one in, but there really isn't this high concept idea. It's a great drama about a family that's scary as hell. And on paper, that shouldn't work. But I think the magic of the movies is that, and especially, of horror movies, is that sometimes you break the rules and audiences connect with them even more. And I think that really is true of Insidious.
And considering you've had some incredible horror movies on your CV over the last, however long it's been now in your career. Have there been any reports given back to you where people have said, we were making this horror movie and something truly creepy or spooky happened while we were making it?
No, the set of horror movies is actually much more fun than if you talk to people who make all different kinds of movies. Horror movie, we don't take ourselves so seriously. We have a lot more fun, and the set of our movies is much more fun than setups of even comedies or dramas. We work with a lot of actors, who've never done horror before. And one of the things they will say, well, I'm not a fan of horror movies and I don't want to make a horror movie because I'm worried the set is going to be scary. But Ethan Hawke was the best example of this. When we made Sinister with him, he was very worried about that. I assured him the set of a horror movie is not scary, even though the movies are very scary. And he went on to make about 5 more horror movies with us. So that proved to be true. But no, we haven't seen any ghosts on our set, not yet. But I'm always hoping.
That could be your next movie, the haunted movie set movie.
The haunted set.
That's your high concept, small budget movie right there.
Right there. James actually has a good idea, which is tangentially related to that. Maybe we'll make it.
Perfect. Jason, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
The further you travel, the riskier the journey becomes.